It's February 2011, and I'm 14 years old. The wind cuts like a knife as I walk home from school, clutching my jacket tight. It's the kind of gray winter day that makes you want to curl up in bed. But I can't do that. I'm not sure if my room will even be mine by the end of the night. My gut tells me something's brewing. I had already heard the whispers at school kids giving me side-eye like I was some criminal. I didn't understand why until Sarah, my closest friend, finally broke it to me. "Your brother's telling people you hit him," she said softly, like she didn't want to believe it herself. "He even showed bruises." I froze. "Are you serious? Bruises? He's making that up." She nodded hesitantly, her gaze dropping to the floor. I figured it wasn't true. But a lot of people believe him. It's been spreading all week. Hearing that hit me like a punch in the gut. Why? Why the hell would my brother do that to me? Sure, we weren't close, but I never thought he'd go this far. The tension between us had been simmering for years, ever since middle school. I was the social wonder-girl who played sports, made friends easily, and cracked jokes in class. Meanwhile, my twin brother Alex was the quiet, straight-A student who never left his bubble. He was smart, sure, but he had this bitterness about him, like the world owed him for his effort. I tried to include him in things when we were younger, invited him to hang out with my friends, even sat with him at lunch when his classmates ignored him. But Alex didn't want that. He wanted my life, my friends, and my happiness, but he didn't want me in the picture. That day after school, I was too rattled to confront him. What would I even say? "Hey, why are you telling everyone I'm a psycho?" No, I needed to think. It wasn't always like this. When we were younger, I thought Alex and I were supposed to be a team. We were twins, after all. But my parents had other ideas. Alex was the future of the family, as Dad liked to say. He got all the praise for his test scores and piano recitals. I got side eyes and lectures about not living up to my potential. "Why can't you be more like Alex?" Mom would sigh whenever I brought home a B or C. It didn't matter that I was captain of the soccer team or that I worked part-time babysitting after school. To them, anything that wasn't academic excellence was just a distraction. By the time we hit high school, the favoritism wasn't even subtle. Alex got the new laptop for his birthday, while I got a hand-me-down phone that barely worked. His friends were chauffeured to the house for his birthday parties, but mine were told to meet at the mall if I was allowed to party at all. Looking back, maybe Alex saw me as competition for the limited attention we got, or maybe he was just insecure. Either way, I never expected him to sabotage me like this. I didn't get a chance to prepare for what came next. The day after Sarah told me about the rumors, I got called to the principal's office. Alex was already there, sitting stiffly with an ice pack pressed to his cheek. My parents were seated across from him, looking grim. The principal folded his hands on the desk. "We've had multiple students report that your brother has been injured by you. Care to explain?" I stared at Alex, my mouth dry. He wouldn't look at me. "What? That's not true," I finally said. "I've never laid a hand on him." "Your brother says otherwise," the principal replied calmly, "and I have to take these claims seriously." Dad's jaw tightened. "We thought we raised you better than this." "You believe him?" I shot back, incredulous. "He's lying." "Stop," Mom hissed, her eyes blazing with anger. "Do you know how humiliating this is for us? You're making this family look bad." Alex sniffled dramatically, finally meeting my eyes with a smug gleam. I wanted to scream. By the time we got home that evening, I knew there was no salvaging this. Dad stormed upstairs, grabbed my duffel bag, and began stuffing clothes into it. What are you doing?" I stammered. "You're not staying here," he snapped. "I won't have a violent child under my roof." I tried to stop him, clutching at his arm. "Dad, I'm not violent. Please, you have to believe me." He shook me off without a second glance. "We've made our decision. Your grandmother is on her way." I looked to Mom for support, but she just crossed her arms, silent. Alex watched from the staircase, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. I don't know how long I stood there, paralyzed by shock and betrayal. Eventually, Grandma arrived, and she didn't hold back. "You're kicking out your own daughter?" she yelled, her voice shaking with fury. "Do you hear yourselves?" "She's dangerous," Dad muttered, avoiding her gaze. "Bullshit. This is abuse, plain and simple." Grandma shot back. "If you don't fix this, I'll make sure CPS knows exactly how you treat her." They didn't argue after that. Instead, they practically shoved me out the door, eager to be rid of the problem child. As Grandma drove me to her house, I couldn't stop crying. Everything I thought I knew about family was shattered. In the months that followed, I learned to keep my guard up. I became a loner at school. Better to be alone than risk more betrayal. But deep down, I never gave up on the idea that one day I'd prove them all wrong. I would make something of myself, not for their approval, but for me. What I didn't know then was that life had a way of circling back. The people who cast you aside often come crawling back when they see you thriving. And when that day came, I'd be ready. It's early spring 2024 now, and I'm 28. I should feel relieved at how far I've come. Instead, I find myself staring at my phone screen in disbelief. 6 missed calls from Mom of all people. I set the phone down on my desk, the notifications still glaring at me, taunting me. We haven't spoken in over a decade. The last time I saw my parents was when I was 18, and they barely even acknowledged me at my high school graduation. My grandma was the one who clapped the loudest, teary-eyed as I crossed the stage. I haven't needed them since, so why now? The journey to this point wasn't easy. After they threw me out at 14, I stayed with grandma in her small 2-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't fancy, she lived off her pension, but it was home. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a burden. She didn't compare me to Alex or lecture me about grades. Instead, she encouraged me to find my own path. Whatever you do, she'd say over morning coffee, make sure you love it. Life's too damn short to waste on things that don't bring you joy. I clung to those words through high school. I threw myself into soccer, even earning a partial scholarship to college. I also started experimenting with freelance writing, mostly small stuff like product descriptions and social media posts for local businesses. It wasn't glamorous, but I enjoyed the creative outlet. Of course, my parents didn't care. They never called to check in. Not once. The silence cut deeper than any argument ever could. Alex was still the golden child, from what I heard through mutual acquaintances. He got into some prestigious university, though rumor had it he struggled socially and dropped out within 2 years. I wondered if he ever regretted what he did to me, but I wasn't about to find out. By 2018, I had graduated college and was juggling multiple clients as a freelance writer. The money wasn't great at first, but I learned quickly. I specialized in website content, blog posts, product copy, brand storytelling, and built a decent reputation in the industry. I also started traveling. There was something freeing about packing up my laptop and hopping on a plane to a new country. I spent a month in Mexico working from beachside cafes, then moved on to Portugal for a summer. Every new place I visited helped me leave a little more of my past behind. The loneliness I once felt was replaced by a sense of adventure. I wasn't running away anymore. I was building a life on my terms. Still, I carried scars from those years with my family. Trust didn't come easily. I kept most people at arm's length, afraid they'd turn on me like Alex had. My friendships were strong but few, and I was okay with that. I'd rather have a tight-knit circle than a crowd of fair-weather friends. By 2024, my career had taken off. I landed a contract with a major fashion brand to rewrite their entire website and manage their seasonal campaigns. It was intense, but it paid more than I'd ever made before. When the project wrapped, I was invited to speak at a marketing conference in Los Angeles. Then a local news channel caught wind of my story and asked me to appear on a segment about career development. The day that interview aired was surreal. Seeing myself on television, talking about my work and how I overcame adversity, felt like a full-circle moment. I wasn't that scared outcast kid anymore. I had made something of myself despite everything. That's when the phone calls started. I hesitated before calling Mom back. Part of me wanted to leave it alone, let her wonder if I'd ever respond. But curiosity got the better of me. She answered on the first ring. "Oh my gosh, you called back!" She gushed, her voice overly cheerful. "We saw your interview. You were incredible, honey." Thanks," I replied, keeping my tone neutral. Dad's voice chimed in from the background. "We're so proud of you. You've really done well for yourself." "Yeah, no thanks to you," I thought bitterly. But I kept quiet. For a few minutes, they asked surface-level questions: where I was living, what projects I was working on. It was awkward, like talking to strangers who were trying too hard to sound familiar. Then came the kicker. "So," Mom began hesitantly, "we've been struggling a bit lately. You know how hard retirement can be." "Uh-huh," I said cautiously, already sensing where this was headed. "The house needs some major renovations," she continued. "We thought, well, since you're doing so well now, maybe you could help out?" There it was. The real reason they reached out after all these years. Not to reconnect, not to apologize. They wanted money. I let out a short laugh, more out of disbelief than humor. "You're joking, right? You haven't talked to me in over a decade and now you're asking for money?" Dad cleared his throat. We're family. Families help each other out. Family? I snapped. You threw me out when I was 14. You didn't care if I was dead or alive. Now you want to play the family card? Mom sighed heavily. We were trying to do what was best for everyone at the time. You were out of control. I was out of control? I interrupted. No, I was the scapegoat. You believed every lie Alex told and didn't even give me a chance to defend myself. There was a pause on the other end of the line. For a moment, I thought maybe they'd acknowledge the truth, but instead, Dad tried to guilt me again. Look, we know mistakes were made, he said, but holding on to grudges doesn't help anyone. We're reaching out now, trying to move forward. I shook my head, even though they couldn't see it. You don't get to rewrite history. I'm not interested in helping you, financially or otherwise. Don't call me again unless it's to apologize sincerely. Without waiting for a response, I hung up. I stared at my phone, my hands trembling slightly. The rush of emotions, anger, hurt, disbelief was overwhelming. I hadn't expected to feel this shaken after all these years. Later that evening, I called Grandma to vent. She wasn't surprised. They've always been good at playing the victim when it suits them, she said. But you're stronger than that. Don't let them drag you back into their drama. She was right. I'd worked too damn hard to let them pull me down again. This was my life now, successful, independent, and free from their toxic influence. They could stew in their regret. March 2025. I was done looking back. The skies are that dull gray you get before a rainstorm, and I'm deep in a project, sipping cold coffee at my desk when I hear a knock at the door. Not just any knock, the kind that comes in rapid, impatient bursts, like the person on the other side has been standing there too long. I glance at my phone. No texts, no warnings. I wasn't expecting anyone. When I swing the door open, I freeze. Standing there, awkwardly bundled in jackets like they just walked out of 2011, are my parents. I haven't seen them in over 10 years, yet here they are on my doorstep like it's some kind of surprise reunion. I don't move. I can't. My mind is already spiraling, trying to connect the dots. Before I can say a word, Mom breaks the silence with a bright fake smile. Surprise! We thought it'd be nice to drop by and catch up. She breezes past me without an invitation, clutching her purse tightly like she's ready to unpack a list of demands. Dad follows close behind, nodding stiffly as he takes off his hat. They stroll into my living room like it's still their house, like they own the place. I want to scream, but my shock traps the words in my throat. What are you doing here? I finally manage to choke out, shutting the door behind me. Dad exhales as he settles onto my couch, stretching like he's already making himself at home. We need to have a family discussion, he says casually. You've been doing well for yourself, and there are some things we need to talk about. The knot in my stomach tightens. Oh no, not this, not today. Dad doesn't waste time sugarcoating it. Look, your brother's been going through a rough patch, he says. He's had trouble finding stable work. And with your mother and me retired, it's been hard to make ends meet. I fold my arms, leaning against the doorframe. So, what does that have to do with me? Mom sighs dramatically, giving me her best, long-suffering mother look. You're doing so well now. We just thought maybe you could support the family a little. Help us out with the house and your brother's situation. There it is. The reason they came all this way. Not to reconnect, not to apologize, but to ask for a bailout. I feel my pulse quicken, heat rising in my chest. You want me to support you? I say slowly, disbelief dripping from every word. You're joking, right? Mom flinches, like I've slapped her. Dad stiffens, but doesn't back down. It's not a joke, he replies firmly. You're a part of this family. Families stick together. When one of us is struggling, the others pitch in. My laugh is bitter and sharp. Oh, so now I'm part of the family? That's funny, considering you kicked me out when I was 14. Did you suddenly forget that part? The room falls into an uncomfortable silence. I watch as my words sink in, but instead of guilt, Mom's face hardens into that familiar, defensive mask. She starts playing her favorite role model mom. We did what we had to do, she says softly, with just the right touch of wounded sadness. You were out of control back then. You don't know how hard it was to raise you and Alex. Hard? I snap, cutting her off. You want to talk about hard? How about being a kid thrown out like garbage, with no one to believe you, no one to defend you? That wasn't hard for you? Mom sighs again louder this time, like I'm just being difficult. We thought we were doing what was best for everyone, she says. Yeah, best for Alex, I spit back. You always believed his lies. You let him destroy my life and didn't even give me a chance to explain. Now you expect me to help him? Help you? Dad clears his throat, trying to steer the conversation back on track. This isn't about the past. It's about moving forward. You're successful now. You have the means to. I'm not responsible for your poor choices. I interrupt, my voice rising. I built this life on my own. Without you. And I'm not going to bankroll your house or Alex's failures. Things escalate fast after that. Dad's face turns red as he stands up, pointing a finger at me. You're being ungrateful. Everything we did was for you. For me? I shout back. You threw me out. You abandoned me. Don't stand there and act like you were some kind of heroic parents. You didn't lift a finger to help me after that. Not once. Mom's eyes glisten with crocodile tears. You have no idea how much we worried about you, she whimpers. You broke our hearts when you left. I laugh bitterly. You kicked me out. I didn't leave by choice. Don't rewrite history now just because it's convenient. The shouting match spirals into a chaotic mess of accusations and deflections. Mom keeps whining about how hard parenting was, while Dad calls me selfish for not wanting to give back to the family. They keep throwing around the word family like it's supposed to mean something, like it can erase everything they did. But I'm done playing nice. You lost the right to call me family a long time ago, I say coldly. You only care now because you need something. You didn't care when I was struggling to survive. Dad opens his mouth to argue again, but I've had enough. Get out, I say, pointing toward the door. They hesitate, as if they think they can change my mind. But when I don't move, Dad finally grabs his coat and storms out. Mom lingers for a moment, wiping her eyes dramatically. We just wanted to make things right, she whispers. You don't make things right by showing up with your hand out, I reply. Goodbye, Mom. I slam the door shut behind them, the sound reverberating through the apartment. My hands are trembling, my heart racing like I just ran a marathon. For a moment, I lean against the door, taking deep breaths to steady myself. It's over. They're gone. But the wounds they reopened? Those will take a while to close again. Later that evening, I call Grandma and tell her what happened. She isn't surprised. They've always been good at twisting things to make themselves look innocent, she says. Don't let them drag you into their mess. You've worked too hard for this peace. I nod, even though she can't see me. Yeah, I'm done with them. And for the first time in years, 2024, I truly believe it. A few days have passed since my parents barged into my life like it was a sitcom reunion. I thought slamming the door on them would be the end of it. I was wrong. Word spread like wildfire through the family grapevine. First, it was Aunt Lesage called while I was on a work Zoom meeting. I ignored it. Then came texts from cousins I hadn't seen in years, followed by DMs on social media. I made the mistake of checking one from my cousin Chloe. They're your parents, she wrote. You should forgive them. Life's too short to hold on to grudges. Grudges? Is that what people thought this was? Like my entire childhood trauma boiled down to me just being petty? I tossed my phone on the couch, my jaw tightening. Everyone had an opinion, of course, but none of them were there when I needed them. Where were these supportive voices when I was kicked out at 14? Over the next 2 days, the messages kept piling up. Some relatives tried to guilt trip me with cliche lines like, family is everything, or they were only trying to do their best. Others were more subtle, asking if I was okay and hinting that maybe I'd been too harsh. I left most of them on read. I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Then came the call I hadn't expected or wanted. Alex. His name lit up my screen, and for a moment I just stared at it. I hadn't heard from my twin brother since graduation. The last image I had of him was burned into my mind, him smirking from the staircase as Dad packed my things. I should have blocked his number years ago, but I guess I never thought he'd bother contacting me. Yet, here we were. I debated letting it ring out, but curiosity won. I wanted to hear what pathetic excuse he had for himself. I swiped to answer and held the phone to my ear. Hey, Alex said casually, like we were long-lost friends catching up. Why are you calling me? I asked flatly. He chuckled softly. Well, Mom and Dad said things got a little heated the other day. Thought maybe I could help smooth things over. I nearly dropped the phone in disbelief. Smooth things over? You have got to be kidding me. Come on, he said, his voice annoyingly calm. I know things weren't great back then, but we were just kids. I didn't know what I was doing. There it was. The same line manipulators always used when they didn't want to take responsibility. I was a kid. As if being young erased every cruel choice he made. You knew exactly what you were doing, I snapped. You spread lies about me. You bruised yourself to make it look like I was attacking you. You destroyed my reputation, my life, because you couldn't handle me having friends. And now you want to play innocent? Look, I've grown up, he said, a slight edge creeping into his voice. I made mistakes. Big deal. Are you really going to hold on to this forever? Big deal? I repeated, my voice shaking with rage. You think it's just a big deal? You ruined everything for me. Do you know what it's like to be kicked out at 14? Do you? Stop playing the victim, he shot back, his tone hardening. It's not my fault you've got a chip on your shoulder. Families fight. You should have moved on by now. The audacity nearly made my head explode. He sounded just like our parents, always minimizing the damage they cause while expecting me to take the blame. We're not family, I said coldly. You made sure of that a long time ago. You don't get to come back now and tell me how I should feel. Alex let out a frustrated sigh. Look, I'm trying here, okay? I'm not the bad guy you keep painting me as. I've got problems too, but whatever. If you want to keep playing the martyr, that's on you. That was the last straw. Without another word, I hung up and blocked his number. I wasn't going to let him worm his way back into my head. I sat on the couch for a long time after that, just staring at the ceiling. The conversation kept replaying in my mind, each word twisting the knife a little deeper. It wasn't just anger I felt sick. Like every wound from my past had been ripped open again. Why now? Why did they all suddenly care after so many years of silence? Was it because they saw me on television and realized I wasn't the failure they expected? Did they think my success gave them the right to claim me again? I didn't know. And honestly, I didn't want to know. What I did know was that I wasn't going to fall for their guilt trips. I'd worked too hard to rebuild my life. They didn't get to just walk back in and act like nothing happened. The next morning, I woke up to even more messages. Mom had apparently called Grandma, complaining about how difficult I was being. Grandma wasn't having it, though. She called me last night. Grandma told me when I called her, crying about how you won't forgive them. I told her she needs to look in the mirror and figure out why you feel that way. She didn't like that. I chuckled softly. Of course she didn't. You're doing the right thing, sweetheart, Grandma said gently. Don't let them make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. They've had years to make things right, and they didn't. That's on them. Her words steadied me in a way nothing else could. She always had my back, even when everyone else turned against me. Thanks, Grandma, I murmured. I really needed to hear that. Anytime, kiddo. You've come too far to let them pull you down now. She was right. I wasn't that scared teenager anymore. I had fought for my peace, and I wasn't going to let them take it from me. By the end of the week, things finally started to quiet down. The messages slowed, and the calls stopped. Maybe they realized I wasn't budging. Or maybe they were regrouping, planning their next move. Either way, I was ready. The next time they tried to invade my life, I wouldn't just slam the door. I'd lock it. 2024, a Thursday, and I'm exhausted from a full day of client meetings. I've barely had time to eat since breakfast, and all I want to do is crash on the couch with takeout and a bad Netflix rom-com. But of course, life has other plans. The knock on my door is slow and deliberate this time. Not frantic like before, it's more ominous, like whoever's on the other side wants me to know they aren't going anywhere. My stomach twists with unease. I already have a bad feeling about this. When I open the door, it feels like a nightmare brought to life. My parents are back. This time, Alex is with them. His arms crossed and his face set in that familiar smug expression. And as if that wasn't enough, my Uncle Rick Dad's older brother and family drama's biggest cheerleader is standing there too. Rick's always been the guy who just wants to keep the peace, which usually means siding with whoever has the loudest voice. I grip the doorframe to steady myself. What are you all doing here? I ask coldly. We need to talk, Dad says, stepping forward like he owns the place. Yeah, no, we're not doing this, I reply, blocking his path. Before Dad can argue, I hear another voice behind me. Oh, yes, we are. I turn to see Grandma stepping out of the elevator, her heels clicking against the hallway floor. She's carrying her purse like it's a shield of authority, her face set in a no-nonsense glare. The relief that washes over me is almost overwhelming. She's here. I'm not facing this alone. We all end up in my living room, though it's more of a standoff than a discussion. Alex slumps on the couch, scrolling on his phone like he couldn't care less. Mom is fidgeting with her wedding ring, while Dad stands by the window, arms crossed, looking ready to pounce. Rick, ever the mediator, sits on the edge of the recliner, his hands folded like he's about to deliver a sermon. Grandma and I stand side by side near the entrance, watching them like hawks. You've no right to show up here demanding anything, Grandma says, her voice cold and steady. You kicked her out as a teenager. She owes you nothing. Dad scoffs. We're not demanding anything. We just want to talk like adults. Adults? I repeat with a bitter laugh. You didn't treat me like an adult back then. You didn't even treat me like a human being. So don't stand here acting like you're the reasonable ones. Mom speaks up, her voice trembling just enough to sound pitiful. We made mistakes, okay? But we're trying to fix things now. We just want to move forward. Grandma doesn't let her off that easy. You want to move forward by harassing her and dragging your son and brother into it? That's not fixing anything. She turns to Rick. And what exactly are you doing here? Playing referee? Rick sighs heavily. Look, I just want to help everyone come to an understanding. There's been a lot of pain on both sides. Both sides? I snap, cutting him off. I was the one who got kicked out. I was the one who had to rebuild my life from scratch. Don't you dare try to make this sound like it's equal. That's not what I meant, Rick says, raising his hands defensively. But holding on to all this anger isn't going to help anyone. You've done well for yourself. Can't you at least hear them out? She's already heard enough, Grandma interjects. And if you think for 1 second that we're going to sit here and let you guilt her, you've got another thing coming. The tension in the room is suffocating. For a moment, no one speaks. Then Alex finally looks up from his phone, rolling his eyes dramatically. This is so stupid, he mutters. You're really going to let her ruin the family like this? I whip around to face him, my blood boiling. I didn't ruin anything. You did that years ago. I've built a life for myself despite everything you and our parents put me through. And you know what? I'm proud of that. I'm not letting any of you tear it down. Alex sneers. Oh, please. You act like you're some self-made hero. You're still playing the victim after all this time. It's pathetic. You think I'm playing the victim? I take a step closer, glaring at him. You lied about me. You faked injuries to make me look like a monster. You wanted to ruin my life, and you almost did. So don't talk to me about being pathetic. His smirk falters for a second, but he quickly regains his composure. Whatever. Keep living in the past. I don't care. Then why are you here? I fire back. If you don't care, why are you standing in my apartment trying to manipulate me again? Dad tries to step in, his voice low and threatening. That's enough. We're family. Whether you like it or not, we don't give up on each other. Grandma raises an eyebrow. You gave up on her the day you threw her out. Don't even try it. If you keep harassing her, I'll call the police. That shuts him up. For the first time since they arrived, I see a flicker of fear in his eyes. He glances at Mom, who looks like she's about to cry. Rick shifts uncomfortably in his seat, realizing he's out of his depth. You need to leave, I say firmly. This conversation is over. Mom sniffles. We just wanted to make things right. No, you wanted to take advantage of me, I interrupt. There's a difference, and I'm not falling for it. Slowly, they begin to gather their things. Alex mutters something under his breath probably. An insult, but I don't bother responding. I've wasted enough energy on him. As they shuffle out of the apartment defeated, Grandma and I stand our ground. The door closes behind them with a final, satisfying thud. For the first time in weeks, I feel a sense of peace. You did good, Grandma says softly, squeezing my shoulder. They can't hurt you anymore. I know, I whisper. I'm done letting them try. And I mean it. This time, the door is staying locked for good. What would you do if the family that abandoned you suddenly came back demanding support? Share your thoughts. I'd love to hear your take.